Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week. And if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. Today, I'll teach you how to make a super cute, versatile off-the-shoulder sweater. Let's keep this brief. Texture, check. Balloon sleeves, double check. Comfy fit, triple check. Yep, just my type of sweater. Speaking of, if you're looking for your type of sweater, shorts, cardigan, or more, you're in the right place. We've got hundreds of modern crochet designs with more coming, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now it's time to get on with the show, so without further ado, for this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 650 grams of yarn. That's 1,200 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5 and 6mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order. And enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us your favorite beauty product. For me, I love my new detangling brush. I probably comb my hair about 5 times a day now. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 5 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet, and Trinity stitch. This tutorial is for size small, but you can adjust it for your size, and we expand onto in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Next, we're all going to grab our 5mm hook, and we're going to start by making a chain that's in multiples of 3, the height that we want our shoulder band to be. Now, I'd like for my shoulder band to be just about 2 inches or 4 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 9. Now that we have our chain, we're going to block off that last chain, and then we're going to do a chain 3. Now that chain 3 doesn't count as a stitch. That's just our turning chain. And now we're going to do a double crochet row. So start with the yarn over, and then we're going to insert our hook into the 4th chain from our hook, or that chain that we blocked off. So bring our hook down into that chain, insert your hook. Once we have those 3 loops, all we're going to do is yarn over, pull through. Should have 3 loops on our hook, so yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2. Now that's our first double crochet. Let's do this again. Start by yarning over, insert your hook into that following chain, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, and pull through 2. And we're going to continue to do this till we reach the end of our chain. Now that we put 1 double crochet into every chain, we're going to get started on our following row, which is going to be a back loop slip stitch row because we want some really pretty ribbing. So what we're going to do from here is starting every back loop slip stitch row, you're going to chain 1 and flip our work. Now we're going to start by finding the last stitch from our previous row, and we're going to insert our hook into that back loop or the loop that's furthest away from us. And then once we have those 2 loops on our hook, we're going to yarn over and pull through both of those loops. So there's the first one, and there's the second one. Let's do this again. Inserting your hook into that following back loop, insert your hook, yarn over, and pull through everything. Now we're going to continue to do this till we reach the end of the row. And a really quick tip that I have for you guys is when we pull through, when we finish every slip stitch, make sure that we aren't accidentally tugging too tightly on our working yarn, otherwise the following row can be too tight to work into. Alright, so I've made my way all the way down with my back loop slip stitch row, and I'm just going to show you guys a really quick tip that I like to do whenever we do our back loop double crochet and back loop slip stitch bands. So when we're going to do our back loop slip stitch row, I always like to do 1 extra slip stitch into the top of that chain 3 so that this side of our band doesn't bulge out. So let's just do this together. So since my initial chain was a chain of 9, I have a total of 9 slip stitches right here. I'm going to find that last stitch, so at the top of that chain 3, I'm going to insert my hook in through that back loop with a slip stitch. Now I should have one extra stitch, so I should have a total of 10 back loop slip stitches. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now our following row is going to be a back loop double crochet row now, but we don't want to continue on with this increase because we want this band to be nice and flat. So what we're going to do is chain 3 and flip our work. Now always getting started on our back loop double crochet row now, we're going to yarn over. You're going to skip that first stitch and then into that following stitch, insert with a double crochet. So for our double crochet rows, this chain doesn't count as a stitch. We're going to start counting from this first double crochet, but from here we're just going to continue to put one back loop double crochet into every stitch. Now our row 3 is all finished up, so let's just count out our double crochets just to make sure we know what we're doing. So remembering that we aren't counting our chain 3, I have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 stitches. And from here, it's just going to be a repeat of our slip stitch and double crochet row. So let's just do the next 2 rows together. Let you guys do the rest on your own. So getting started on every slip stitch row, you're going to chain 1, flip our work, and then we're going to be putting one back loop slip stitch into every stitch, including into that chain 3. So our slip stitch rows will always have one extra stitch from our starting chain. So my back loop slip stitch row is all finished up, and just to count this out with you guys, I have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 stitches. Now we're just going to get started on our following double crochet row as well. So starting off our back loop double crochet row, always chain 3, flip our work, yarn over, preparing for a double crochet, and remember that we are not going to be inserting into that first stitch. We're going to insert into that second with our first back loop double crochet, and then continue to put one back loop double crochet into every stitch. Alright, so now my double crochet row is all finished up, so let's just count that out one more time. Remember, we aren't counting our chain 3, so I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 stitches. And from here, we're just going to continue to repeat those 2 rows until this band can stretch around our shoulders and meet at the tip in the middle of our chest. Now I'm just going to leave you guys with one more tip, but the more rows that we do, the more it's going to slant. But that is completely fine and completely normal. It'll all even out once when it's seamed up. So go ahead and get this all finished up, and I will meet you guys back right after a double crochet row is finished. Alright, so I am back, and my band is all finished up. Now I have a total of 87 rows, and my length is just about 30 inches or 76 centimeters, and that is unstretched. Now from here, we're going to need to seam the corners together and single crochet along the bottom at the same time, so let's get that started. Now the easiest way to get this done is by taking our band and laying it down flat, making sure that the ribbing that we have is faced down. Now the next thing we're going to do is take the 2 ends that we have, making sure that the 2 bottom corners that we have are placed on top of each other, and this is going to be the general shape of our band. Now from here, we're going to be inserting our hook into the corner stitch of both bands, and then we're going to seam and single at the same time, so let's get that started. Alright, so the easiest way to get the single crochet and seam started is making sure that the point that we have is faced away from us. Now the next thing we're going to do is pull our working yarn through both sides, so just yarn over, pull through everything, and now we're just going to sandwich these 2 ends together. So what we're going to do is put 2 single crochets into every side double crochet, and then 1 single crochet into every side slip stitch row, making sure that we're working in through the back as well. So we're all going to start with a chain 1, and I'm just going to insert my stitch marker into that stitch so I know where the middle is. Now I'm going to find my first row for my front panel, which is this side double crochet. I'm going to insert my hook into that top loop, just like that, and then I'm going to find the first stitch from my back panel. So this is my first stitch right over here. I'm going to insert my hook into there, and then single crochet them together. And if you guys have this tail end, go ahead and just place it on top of your hook so that it's woven in so that we don't have to deal with it later. We're just going to single crochet. So pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. Now there's our first stitch. Let's do another one. Since we're working into our side double crochets, we're going to find that same top loop, insert your hook into there, making sure that our tail end is still placed on top. And then we're going to find that next available stitch into the back panel, which this is mine right here. I'm going to insert my hook into there, and then single crochet. Now all together we should have 2 stitches all finished up. Now our next side row is a side slip stitch row. So we're going to find that top loop and just insert your hook into there, into the front panel. And then we're going to find that next available stitch into the back panel. Insert your hook into there and then single crochet. And then from there it's going to be a repeat until we don't have any more stitches left into the back panel. So let's just do one more set a little bit quicker. So my next side row is a side double crochet row. I'm going to find that top loop, insert my hook into there, and then find that next available stitch into the back panel, and do 1 single crochet. And for our side double crochets, we need to do 2 single crochets. So into that top side loop again, and then into that next available stitch into the back panel, and then single crochet. And just to do our slip stitch row as well, find that top loop, insert your hook into there, into that following stitch into the back panel, insert your hook into there, and then single crochet. And then that's it. We're going to continue to do this until we don't have any more stitches within the back panel left to work into. And then I'll meet you guys back just so I can show you guys how we're going to be working into the rest of the band. Alright, so I'm back and I don't have any more stitches left to work into my back panel. And now we're just going to continue on with our row sequence, making our way all the way around, and then I will meet you guys back so that we can seam this portion together as well. So let's just do the first 2 rows. Now the following row that we should all have should be a side double crochet row, since our last stitch should have been worked into our side slip stitch. So into that next side double crochet, I'm going to insert with 1, and then with 2 single crochets. And then my next row should be the side slip stitch row, so just find that top loop and single crochet once into there. Now we're just going to continue to do this, making our way all the way around, leaving the same amount of rows that we have that we just worked into when we were combining our front and back panel. So if you guys have my numbers, I actually just worked into the first 6 rows of my front panel, because if we're counting this out, I have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stitches. And we want to make sure that we're leaving the same amount of stitches as chains we made when we started off this section. So I will meet you guys back when I have 6 rows left within the back panel so that we can sandwich everything together. Alright, so I am back and I've single crocheted my way all the way around my band, and now I just need to connect this end of our band together. So we should have all left the same amount of rows that we took up when we were working the front portion of our band, and like I said in the previous clip, I needed to leave 6 rows, so here are mine, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now all we're going to do is just place that top band on top of our back panel, and then we're going to single crochet into both. So getting started on this, we're going to find that first available stitch into the front panel, which should be a stitch now, and insert your hook into there. Next, we're going to find that next available stitch into the back panel, which it should be a side slip stitch row for everyone. And this is my side slip stitch row right here, so I'm going to find that top loop, insert my hook into there, and then single crochet them together. So same rules apply, still 2 single crochets into every side double crochet, and then 1 single crochet into every side slip stitch. So since we just did our slip stitch, let's do the following double crochet row together. Find that next available stitch into the front panel, and then we're going to find that following side double crochet row, insert your hook into that top loop with 1 single crochet, and then we're going to find the next stitch into the front panel. Find that same double crochet from our previous row, since we just did the first one, now we're about to do the second, and then single crochet. And that's it. We're just going to continue to do this, making our way all the way down, and when we don't have any more stitches left to work into, slip stitch into that chain space and then do a chain up of 1 and cut. Alright, so we are back, and the next thing we are going to do within our shoulder band is separate our front and back panel. So the first thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to find our middle stitch or stitches into the back portion of our shoulder band. So as you guys can see, I have my stitch marker into this middle stitch that we have. We did that once when we started to do our single crochet along the entirety of the bottom. And from that point, I counted out to my middle stitch that I have, which is this dark blue stitch marker right over here. So if you guys have my numbers, I've inserted my stitch marker into the 66th stitch because I had a total of 131 stitches. Now, if you guys have an even number of stitches and you guys have 2 middle stitches, insert your stitch marker into both of those. Now that we have this stitch marker into place, the next thing we're going to do is try our piece on, making sure that the point is in the middle of our chest, face downwards, and we're going to be inserting our next stitch marker into the stitches that we have right where our underarm is. So a couple quick tips that I have for this one. We want to make sure that we have the same amount of stitches from our middle stitch marker to this first underarm stitch marker, and then over to the other underarm stitch marker as well. And then from our underarm stitch marker all the way to our other underarm stitch marker, we're going to want to make sure that it ends in an even number. So if you guys would like to know my numbers, from my middle stitch marker right here, I have a total of 25 stitches on this side, 25 stitches on this side, and from here to here, I have a total of 50 stitches, which is even, which is perfect. And from there, we're going to take this number and we're going to do the same thing to the back panel. So let's go ahead and flip this over. Now this portion is going to be different. If you have one stitch marker like me, we are not going to be counting that middle stitch. So I need to count out 25 stitches, so I'm going to start into my next available stitch, count out 25, and then into my next available stitch and count out 25. Now for those of you that have 2 middle stitch markers, you will be including your stitch marker stitches. And we're only doing that because we want to make sure that we have the closest amount of numbers to our front panel. So for those of you that just have 1 middle stitch marker, we will have 1 extra stitch. But we'll talk about that once we get to doing our back panel. But for those of you that have 2, you guys are lucky and you guys should have the same amount of stitches for your front and your back panel. And now that we have that all separated, we can get started on our front panel. So let's go ahead and set this off to the side and grab our 6mm hook. So getting started on our front panel, we are all going to grab our category 4 yarn, make a slip knot with our 6mm hook, and we're all going to start by making an odd number chain that reaches from about 1 inch underneath your underarm down to where we want the bottom of this top to be. Now I would like for mine to stop right about where my waist is, keeping in mind that we will have a bottom band. So I'm going to start by making a chain of 17. That's 4.5 inches or 11 centimeters. Alright, so now that we have our chain, you're going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Now that chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's just our turning chain, and we're now going to get started with our Trinity stitch. Now our first Trinity stitch is going to be worked a little bit differently than the rest of our Trinity stitches. So what we're going to do is insert our hook into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook with a single crochet, just like that. And then to get started with our Trinity stitch, we're going to be inserting our hook into that same chain that our single crochet is worked into. So into this chain right here, go ahead and insert your hook into there, yarn over, and pull up a loop. Now to do our Trinity stitch, we need to have a total of 4 loops on our hook. So we are also going to be inserting our hook into that following chain. So insert, pull up another loop. We should have 3, and we need 4. So into that next chain, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through. And now that we have 4, we're going to yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. But a really quick tip that I have for you guys right before we do that is we want to make sure that we're using a medium to loose grip when we're working our Trinity stitches. Otherwise the following row could be a little too tight to work into. So from here, all we're going to do is yarn over and pull through all 4 of those loops on our hook. And then to close off the Trinity stitch, we're just going to chain 1. And that is 1 Trinity stitch set, all finished up. Let's do the next one. Now our second Trinity stitch is going to be worked a little bit differently. So we're going to start by inserting our hook into the last stitch that our previous Trinity stitch is worked into. So this is mine. we're going to insert our hook into there, yarn over, and pull through. And like I said, we do need a total of 4 loops on our hook. So into that following chain, insert your hook, pull through. Also into that following chain, pull through. And once we have those 1, 2, 3, 4 loops on our hook, gently yarn over, pull through all 4, and then to close off this Trinity stitch set, chain 1. Let's do this again. We're going to start by inserting our hook into that last stitch that our previous Trinity stitch is worked into. So this one right over here. Insert your hook into there, pull through. Then we're going to insert our hook into that following chain, yarn over, pull through, and then one more to get a total of 4 loops on our hook. Yarn over and pull through. And now that we have that, we're going to yarn over, pull through all 4, chain 1 to finish off this Trinity stitch. Let's just do one more a little bit quicker and let you guys do the rest on your own. So start by inserting your hook into the last stitch that our previous Trinity stitch was worked into. So insert, pull through into that following chain, yarn over, pull through, and then into the chain right after that to get a total of 4 loops on our hook. Once we have those 4 loops, yarn over, pull through all 4, chain 1 to close it off. And from here, we're just going to continue to do our Trinity stitch, making our way all the way down until we have 2 stitches left. So we have just made our way all the way down with our Trinity stitch, and we need to close off this row with our last Trinity stitch in an increase as well. So from here, we're going to start off our Trinity stitch the same way that we've done all the other ones. So start by inserting our hook into the last stitch from our previous Trinity stitch, pull through, into that following stitch, pull through, and then into that last stitch, pull through. Now once we have those 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, and pull through all 4. Now since we're doing an increase, we're going to be inserting into that same last chain with a single, a half double, and a double crochet. So to get that started, we aren't going to do our chain from here. All we're going to do is just insert with a single, insert into that same last chain with a half double, and then into that same last chain with our double crochet. And that is that. Now we're only going to be increasing into every other row, so working our way down towards the bottom, we aren't going to do any increases. So right after we finish our double crochet, all we're going to do is chain 1, flip our work, and then to start off our Trinity stitch, every first Trinity stitch is going to start with just 1 single crochet into the last stitch from our previous row. And now we can get started on our first Trinity stitch, which is inserting our hook into that same stitch that that single crochet is into, and pull through. Insert your hook into that following stitch, pull through, and then into the stitch right after that, and pull through for a total of 4 loops on our hook. From there, we're going to yarn over, pull through all 4, and then chain 1 to finish off the set. Let's do another one. This is our second one now, so what we're going to do is find the last stitch from our previous Trinity stitch, and start by inserting our hook into there, pull through, insert into that following stitch, pull through, and then into the stitch right after that, and pull through. Now once we have those 4 loops, just yarn over, pull through all 4, chain 1 to secure. Let's just do one more, and then I'll let you guys do the rest on your own. So insert your hook into the last stitch from our previous Trinity stitch, pull through, into that following stitch, pull through, and then into the stitch right after that, pull through. Now once we have those 4 loops, yarn over, pull through all 4, and chain 1. And continue to do this until we have just 2 stitches left. So we are back, and we are nearly at the end of our row 2. Now for some, it could look like we only have 1 stitch left, but as you guys can see, the last stitch from our previous row is a little tucked underneath. So if it's a little slanted, that's completely fine. That still counts as our last stitch. And now we're going to close this off with another Trinity stitch. So start by inserting your hook into the last stitch from our previous Trinity stitch, into that following stitch, and then into that last stitch in the row. pull through, yarn over, pull through all 4. So since we're along the bottom, or the bottom of our row 2, we need this side to be blunt, so we're just going to be inserting 1 single crochet into the last stitch from our previous row. So just bring our hook down with a single crochet. So the last Trinity stitch is not going to have a chain, we're just going to single crochet into that last stitch. And I want to do the increase with you guys one more time. So let's just get this falling row started. So chain 1, flip our work, and just to do the first one, single crochet into the last stitch from our previous row, and then start with our Trinity stitch. There's our first one, and our chain, and then just to do the second one, insert your hook. There is 1 loop, there we go. There is second, and there is our third one for a total of 4 loops on our hook. So pull through all 4 and chain 1, and continue to do this until we have 2 stitches left. Alright, so we are back and we're nearly finished with our row 3, so let's do our last Trinity stitch and increase together. So start by inserting a hook into the last stitch from our previous row, that second to last stitch, and then also that last stitch for a total of 4 loops on our hook. Yarn over, pull through all 4. Now at the end of every odd number row, we're going to be doing an increase. So single crochet into that last stitch. Into that same last stitch, we're going to do a half double crochet, and then a double crochet into that same last stitch. And then that's it. From there, we're just going to chain 1, flip our work, and then working our way down for every even number row. We aren't going to have any increases or decreases. So just do your Trinity, making our way all the way down, making sure that we end this portion on just a single crochet because we need it to be blunt. Now from there, we're just going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until it can reach from mid-underarm over to the corner of our underarm. And then I'll meet you guys back right after we finish an odd number row so that we can make a chain all the way up to our shoulder band. Alright, so we are back and I have a total of 7 rows, and this width is just about 3 inches or 8 centimeters. Now from here, since we all should have ended along the top right after an odd number row, we're now going to make an even number chain that reaches all the way up to our shoulder band. So I've already measured mine out, and I need a total of about 3 inches or 8 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 14. And now that we have our chain, we can reintroduce our shoulder band. And what we're going to do from here is slip stitch it into that stitch marker stitch that we have for the front panel. So into that stitch marker stitch, go ahead and insert your hook. And once when our work is into there, we're going to yarn over and pull through everything to connect this body portion to our shoulder band. So just yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. And now that this is nice and connected, we do need to work our way up to the following row. So into that next stitch that we have that's working down towards our point, we're going to slip stitch. So into that following stitch, we are going to insert our hook, yarn over, and pull through everything. And now from here, whenever we are working our way down towards the bottom, we aren't going to be doing any increases or decreases. So let's start by flipping our work. And then into the last chain that we have, we're going to do our first Trinity stitch. So that's always going to start with just a single crochet. And then into that same chain, we're going to insert our hook, pull through, following chain, pull through, chain right after that, pull through for a total of 4 on our hook, yarn over, pull through, chain 1 to secure. And from here, continue to do our Trinity stitch, making our way all the way down, making sure that we end this row on just 1 single crochet. At the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, and then do our Trinity stitch, making our way all the way back up towards the base, leaving the last 2 stitches so that we can decrease together. Alright, so we have just made our way all the way back down with our second front panel row, and like I said, we should have 2 stitches left. Now since each of our rows needs to end on an odd number, what we are going to do is, if you guys did your last chain for this last Trinity stitch that we did, like how I did right here, I'm actually just going to take apart just that chain, and then we're going to do a decrease so that this row can end on an odd number. So what we're going to do is a decrease of 2 single crochets. So right after this Trinity stitch, making sure that we don't have that chain, we're going to insert our hook into that second to last stitch, pull through, and then also into that last stitch and pull through. Now that we have those 3 loops on our hook, we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3, and that is our decrease of 2 single crochets, and we are now finished with this row. Now we do need to work our way up to the following row, so find that next available stitch into our base and slip stitch into there to close off this row. Now to start the next row, slip stitch into that next stitch into the base, flip our work, and whenever we're working our way down towards the bottom, we will not be doing any increases or decreases, so just do our Trinity stitch, making our way all the way down. So let's just do the first one together. We're all going to start by finding the last stitch from our previous row with a single crochet into that same stitch, pull through, following stitch, pull through, stitch right after that, pull through. Now that we have those 4 loops, yarn over, pull through all 4, chain 1, and continue to do this, making our way all the way down, making sure that we end a row on a single crochet. Now our following row is going to be a decrease row, so get started on our following row, leaving the last 2 stitches and remembering not to do the last chain into our last Trinity stitch that we're doing, and then I'll meet you guys back. Alright, so we've made our way all the way down with our Trinity stitch and all the way back up with our next Trinity stitch row, leaving the last 2 stitches, and when we finished our previous Trinity stitch, we didn't do a chain 1 right after. What we're going to do is just do another decrease into the second to last and into the last stitch from our previous row. So right from where we're at, we're just going to insert our hook into that second to last stitch, pull through, into that last stitch, pull through all 3, and that is it. Now just to connect it into the base together, slip stitch into that next available stitch to close off this row, and then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next stitch into the base, flip our work, and then from here we're just going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows. So just as a quick tip, when we're working our way down towards the bottom, no increases and no decreases, and ending on just 1 single crochet, and then working our way up towards the base, we're going to do a decrease into the last 2 stitches, and that's a decrease of 2 single crochets, making sure that we end on an odd number of stitches every time. We're just going to continue to do that, making our way all the way down until we reach our middle stitch, and then I will meet you guys back so we can work our way up to the other side. Alright, so I'm back and I've just made my way all the way down to my middle stitch. Now from here, we're going to be repeating everything that we just did here on this side, but instead of doing decreases, we're going to be doing increases all the way up until we reach our stitch marker. So just as a really quick overview, if we ended along the top like me or along the bottom, it does not matter. The rows that we're always going to be increasing into from here on out is going to be the rows that's worked up into the base. So since I'm along the top, I'm going to slip stitch into that following stitch, so the same way that we've been connecting into the base, work my way all the way down with no increases and no decreases. Then I'm going to work my way all the way up, and then I will meet you guys back to show you how we're going to do our increase and connect it into the base together just once more. Alright, so I have made my way all the way back up with my second increase row, remembering that mine ended along the top. So I just did a regular Trinity stitch row, and then I worked my way all the way up and worked my last Trinity stitch into those last 2 stitches, but I didn't close it off with a chain, because since we're right next to the base, we're going to need to do an increase. So what we're going to do after we've finished our last Trinity, into that last stitch, which should be taken up by our previous Trinity stitch, we're going to be doing an increase of 3. So how that's going to work is yarn over, and then just into that last stitch, we're going to do 3 half double crochets. So there's 1 into that same stitch, there is 2, and then once more, there is 3. And now the increase for our increase row is all finished up. And we're going to continue to connect it into the base the same way that we've been doing. So we're going to insert into that next available stitch into the base, and then we're going to work our way all the way down with our Trinity stitch again. So just to do this one more time for good measure, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, flip our work, and then do our Trinity stitch, making our way all the way down. At the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, and then make our way all the way back up, doing our Trinity stitches, but make sure that we don't finish off that last Trinity stitch so that we can increase together. Alright, so I've made my way all the way back up with my Trinity stitch, I have started my last one, but I didn't close it off. So what we're going to do, just like how we did the previous increase row, into that last stitch, which should be taken up by a previous Trinity stitch row, we're going to do an increase of 3 half double crochets. So yarn over and insert into that last stitch with 1 half double, with our second half double, and then our third half double crochet, and then just to connect it into the base once more, find that next stitch into the base, slip stitch into there to close off this row, slip stitch up that following stitch, flip our work, and then do our Trinity stitch, making our way all the way back down. Now from here, just continue to repeat those 2 rows all the way up until I reach this stitch marker over here for the front panel, and then I'll meet you guys back so that we can do the underarm. Alright, so I am back and I have just finished up the second half of my front panel. We're going to finish it off by doing our underarm, and the entirety of our front panel will be all finished up. So first things first, we're going to start by inserting our stitch marker into the same amount of chains that we made when we worked our way all the way up to our band. So if you guys have my numbers, I made a chain of 14. So from here, counting from the top, I counted down 14 stitches and then inserted my stitch marker. Now from here, since we should all have ended along the bottom, we're going to do our Trinity stitch, making our way all the way up until we have 2 stitches right before a stitch marker, and we are not going to finish off our last Trinity stitch with a single crochet. I'll meet you guys back so you can do a decrease. Alright, so I am back and I am almost finished with my first decrease row for my underarm. Now what we did was did our Trinity stitch, making our way all the way up. We didn't finish our last Trinity stitch with a chain, we just left it as is, and we should have 2 stitches right before a stitch marker. And all we're going to do is a decrease of 2 single crochets. So into that second to last stitch, insert your hook, pull through, and then into that last stitch, the stitch right before a stitch marker, pull through, and we should have 3 loops on our hook. So just yarn over, pull through all 3. And remembering for the underarm portion, we decrease into every other row. So from here, just chain 1, flip our work, do our Trinity stitch, making our way all the way down, work our way back up with our Trinity stitch, and then close it off the same way. So leave the last 2 stitches, do a decrease of 2 single crochets, and then continue on for the same amount of rows that we have for our other underarm portion. And then once we do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I'll meet you back. Alright, so I am back and the entirety of my front panel is all finished. I did do a chain up of 1 and cut. And now from here, we're going to do the back panel. That's going to be a little bit easier than the front panel, so let's just get that started. We're all going to start by making the same underarm as our front panel. So same amount of chains, same increases for the same amount of rows, and then we're going to make the same chain that we made that led all the way up to our shoulder band. Now I actually have mine all finished up, and all we're going to do once when we have our underarm and our chain is flip our work over so that now we're looking at the back portion of our shoulder band. We're going to insert our hook into that next stitch marker stitch, work towards the middle until we reach our stitch marker along this side. Now we're going to be connecting it into the base the same way that we have connected the entirety of our front panel, but we aren't going to be doing any increases or decreases. So from here on out, just make sure that we are ending our last stitch on just a single crochet, and then I'll meet you guys back along this end. But a really quick tip that I have for you guys, if you guys are like me and you have just 1 middle stitch for your back panel, I will meet you guys back when we have 2 stitches left along the end. If you guys have an even number from stitch marker to stitch marker, you're going to be working straight into that stitch marker stitch and you should all be good. But I'll meet you guys back just to show you guys how we're going to be working into there, and then we can move on. Alright, so I am back with my back panel. Now, for those of us that had just 1 middle stitch along the back, we should have stopped until we had 2 stitches left into the base. So for those of us, we should be along the top, we should have 1 available stitch, and then our stitch marker stitch. And for those of you that had 2 middle stitches, with your numbers you should have worked into your stitch marker stitch, and y'all should end along the bottom. For you guys just hang tight until the next clip. But for those of us that had these 2 stitches left, we're going to be doing 1 more Trinity stitch row, but we're going to need to combine these last 2 rows because we all want to end along the bottom. Because when we get started with our underarm portion, we don't want to have to cut and then reinsert our hook. So what we're going to do is just combine these last 2 stitches. So into my following available stitch, I'm going to insert my hook, pull through, and then into my next stitch, which should be my stitch marker stitch, insert, and pull through. from here, once we have those 3 loops on our hook, we're just going to hook that first loop, bring that underneath, flip our work, and then do our Trinity stitches, making our way all the way down. Now that's going to be my last row for my back panel, and then right after that, I'm going to be doing the underarm portion the same exact way we did for the front panel. So just insert our stitch marker into the same amount of chains that we made for this side, and then do the same decreases for the same amount of rows. Go ahead and get that all finished up, do a chain of 1 and cut, and then I'll meet you guys back. Alright, so I'm back and I've just finished up the underarm portion for the back panel, and I did do a chain up of 1 and cut. Now from here, we're just going to seam our sides together. So start by making sure that our work is flipped wrong side out. So by wrong side out, I mean the ribbing that we have for the shoulder band is along the inside. And then we're going to start by inserting our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. So now that our hook is in through both the front and the back panel, we are next going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, and then we're going to do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now from here, all we're going to do is single crochet both our front and back panel together. So start by finding that first stitch into the front panel, insert your hook, find that next stitch into the back panel, insert your hook, and then just single crochet them together. And that's it. Let's do this again. Into that next stitch into the front panel, next stitch into the back panel, insert your hook, and single crochet. And that's it. Continue to do this until we don't have any more stitches left. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat everything we just did here on the other side. So now that our front and back panel are all seamed together, we're now going to get started on our sleeve. So first things first, we're going to need to make sure that our work is flipped right side out now, meaning all of the seams that we have are along the inside. And then from here, we're going to insert our hook into the stitch that's nearest to our side seam. From here, just insert our yarn onto our hook and pull through. And then we're going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets, working our way up our underarm, and then 1 single crochet into every stitch, making our way all the way up and around, and then back to alternating between 1 to 2 single crochet, going back down our underarm. So let's just do the first few together. Now after we've pulled our yarn through, chain 1 to secure. Now let's all start by finding our first side row. This is mine right here, and we're all going to start by inserting our hook into that top loop with a single crochet. And since we're along the top, we should have a handful of tail ends right here. So if you guys would like to do this with me, just place all of your tail ends over your hook and then single crochet over it so that we don't need to weave in those tail ends later. So now that our 1 single crochet is finished, let's get started on our next row, which we're going to be putting 2 single crochets into there. So this is my following side row right here. I'm going to find that top loop and then insert my hook into there with 1 single crochet, and then into that same top loop with my second single crochet. And that's it. Let's just do one more set. Start by finding your next side row, which this is mine. Find that top loop and insert into there with 1 single crochet. And then find your next side row and then insert into that top loop with 2 single crochets. And that's it. We're just going to continue to do this until we don't have any more side rows left to work into. Then we're going to single crochet, working our way all the way up our shoulder. Once we reach our last stitch right over here, I will meet you guys back because we do need to insert our stitch marker into that very last stitch before we start working into the shoulder band. So I have made my way all the way up to my shoulder band with my single crochets. And right before we get started into that first shoulder band stitch, into this last stitch that we have into the shoulder, just insert our stitch marker into there. And once we have that, we're just going to work into the bottom of our shoulder band. So start by finding that next available stitch, which this is mine right here. So I'm just going to insert my hook into there with a single crochet. And continue to work across our shoulder band, putting 1 single crochet into every stitch. And I will meet you back right before we get started into working into this side's shoulder portion. Alright, so we've just worked our way across our shoulder band. I have worked into my last stitch and inserting our hook into that following stitch, going down the shoulder portion. We're going to insert our stitch marker into that next stitch. So into that first stitch, we're just going to insert our hook with 1 single crochet so far, but make sure that we are inserting our stitch marker into there because we need our stitch marker to be placed evenly on both sides. And then from here, continue to put 1 single crochet into every stitch Then alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row, slip stitch into that chain space, and then I will meet you back. Alright, so now that we have made our way all the way around with our single crochet row, we're now going to get started on the sleeve length. So we're all going to start by making an odd number chain, the length that we want our sleeve to be, keeping in mind that we will have our cuffs as well. So I would like for my sleeve to be just about 15 inches or 38 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain of 55. Alright, so now that we have our chain, we're going to do our Trinity stitch all the way back down. So all we're going to do is block off that last chain, chain 1, and then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to do our first Trinity stitch, which we should all know how to do by now. And then from there, continue to do our Trinity stitch, making our way all the way down. But when we're working our last Trinity stitch into the last 2 stitches, don't do that last single crochet. I'll meet you guys back to show you how we're going to increase once more, even though it's the same way that we increased for the front panel. Alright, so we have made our way all the way down with our Trinity stitch. We did get started on our last Trinity stitch, but we didn't do our last single crochet. What we're going to do is an increase of 3 half double crochets into that same last stitch. So this is going to be done exactly the same way that we have done the front panel. So just to get that started, we're going to yarn over, into that last stitch, insert with a half double, insert into that same last stitch with a half double, and then one more half double crochet into that same last stitch. Now from here, we're going to be connecting it into the base the same way as well. I just wanted to remind you guys, we're going to find that next available stitch into the base, insert our hook into there with a slip stitch. Now we're only going to be increasing into every other row. So just to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next stitch into the base, flip our work, and then do our Trinity stitch, making our way all the way down. And since we're working down towards the end, close it with a single crochet. And then from there, we're just going to continue to repeat those 2 rows, making our way all the way up until we reach our first stitch marker right over here, making sure that the last row that we have is worked into that stitch marker stitch. And then I'll meet you guys back so we can work across the shoulder band. Alright, so I am back and I have just finished up all of my increase rows, making sure that the last row that I did is worked into that stitch marker stitch. Now from here, we're going to be working across the bottom of our shoulder band, but working across, we aren't going to do any increases or decreases. So this portion is going to be exactly the same way that we did the back panel. So it doesn't matter if you guys ended along the top or along the bottom, just continue on with our rows with no increases and no decreases, making our way all the way down until we reach this last stitch right before our following stitch marker. Alright, I am back and I have just made my way all the way across the bottom of my shoulder band, and I have just finished 1 stitch right before my next stitch marker. Now from here, we're going to do our decrease side, working our way back down. So when it comes to doing our decreases, we are only going to decrease when we're working in towards the base. So since I'm along the inside, I'm going to slip stitch into that following stitch, and then do my Trinity stitch row, working my way out with no increases and no decreases. And then I'm going to start my following row, so chain 1, and working my way back, making sure that I'm leaving 2 stitches and not finishing off that last Trinity stitch that we have with a chain. But if you guys end along the outside, just work your way all the way back up, and then I'll meet you guys back just to remind you guys how we're going to decrease once more. Alright, so I've made my way all the way back down towards my base. I have 2 stitches left right before my stitch marker, so now we're just going to decrease together, which is going to be the same way we decreased for the front panel. So we're all going to make sure that we didn't do a chain or a single crochet into that last Trinity stitch that we did. Then into that second to last stitch, we're going to do a decrease of 2 single crochets. So insert your hook, pull through, insert your hook into that following stitch, pull through, yarn over, and pull through all 3. And that's that. From here, we're just going to slip stitch it into that next available stitch into the base. And then just to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next stitch, and since we will be working our way out, we aren't going to do any decreases. And from there, we're just going to continue to repeat those 2 previous rows until we don't have any more stitches left to work into the base, and then I'll meet you guys back. Alright, so we are back and we have just finished up working into the entirety of our sleeve. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so all we're going to do is seam our sleeve together. So first things first, make sure that our work is flipped wrong side out, meaning all of the seams that we have are along the outside. Alright, so now that our work is flipped wrong side out, we're now going to do a single crochet seam. So the same seam that we did for the sides. So since we already know how to do this, I'm just going to do the first one off with you. Just start by inserting your hook into that first stitch, into the front panel, and then into that next stitch, into the back panel, and then just single crochet them together. And that's it. We're just going to continue to do this, making our way all the way down. When we reach the end of the row, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I will meet you back so we can do the cuff. Alright, so I am back and my sleeve is all seamed up, and the next thing we're going to do is our cuff. So first things first, we're going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, meaning the seam that we have is now along the inside. Then we're going to insert our 5mm hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the bottom of our sleeve. Next, we are going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and then we're going to do a single crochet row along the bottom, but we do need it to cinch, so we're going to be doing a decrease of 2 into every 2 side rows. So let's get that started. Let's all start by finding our first side row. This is mine right here. All I'm going to do is find that top loop and insert my hook into there. And then we're going to find our following side row as well, which this is mine right here. And then we're going to yarn over and pull through. Now I do need to do a decrease, so we're going to find our following side row, which is this one right here. So I'm just going to insert my hook into that top loop, pull through, and when we have those 3 loops on our hook, just yarn over, pull through all 3. Now let's do the next one. This is our following side row right here. Insert into that top loop, pull through, insert your hook into that following side row's top loop, which is this one right here, pull through, and when we have those 3 loops, yarn over, pull through all 3. And that's it. We're just going to continue to decrease our way all the way around, slip stitch into that chain space, and then I will meet you back. Alright, so now that our single crochet row is all finished up, we're going to get started on the length of our cuff. So from here, right after we've slip stitched into our chain space, make a chain the length that we want our cuff to be. Now I'd like for mine to be just about 2 inches or 5 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 10. And now that we have our chain, block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Now into the chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. So bring our hook down, insert your hook. Once we have those 2 loops on our hook, just yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. And a really quick tip that I have when it comes to doing our slip stitches is when we finish every stitch, make sure that we aren't accidentally tugging too tightly on our working yarn, otherwise the following row can be a little too tight to work into. So let's just do one more. Insert your hook into that following chain, both loops, pull through 2, and continue to do this until we reach the base. And now that we've made our way all the way down to the base, we're going to find that next available stitch, and then we're going to slip stitch into there to close off this row. Now just to work our way up to the following row, we're going to find that next available stitch into the base, slip stitch into there, and then we're going to start by flipping our work. And now we're going to be doing back loop slip stitches, so let's get that started. We're all going to start by finding that last available stitch from our previous row, insert our hook into that back loop, yarn over, and pull through everything, making sure that we're not tugging too tightly on our working yarn. And we're going to continue to put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch until we reach the end of the row. And now that we're at the end of the row, just chain 1, flip our work, and then make our way back down, putting 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. And from there, we're just going to continue to repeat that with no increases and no decreases until we don't have any more stitches left to work into the base. And then I'll meet you guys back so that we can seam everything together. Alright, so we are back with our back loop slip stitch rows, and now we're going to seam it all together since we don't have any more stitches left to work into. So first things first, we're going to want to make sure that our work is flipped right side out because this is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam. So start by inserting your hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Now once we have that, we're going to yarn over and pull through everything. And then we're going to get started by finding that first available stitch into the front panel. This is mine right here. We're going to insert our hook only into that front loop. We're going to find that next available stitch into the back panel. Only insert your hook into that back loop, and once we have those 3 loops, yarn over, and pull through all 3 of those loops. There's our first outside loop slip stitch. Let's do that again. Find that next available stitch into the front panel, insert your hook, find that next available stitch into the back panel, insert into that back loop, yarn over, pull through all 3, and let's just do one more. We're going to find that next available stitch into the front panel, insert your hook into that front loop, next available stitch into the back, insert into that back loop, yarn over, and pull through all 3. And that's it. We're just going to continue to do this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. And when we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat everything we just did here on the other side. Alright, so now that our sleeves are all finished up, the last thing we're going to have to do is our bottom band. So the first thing we're going to want to do is make sure that our work is still flipped right side out, and then we're going to be inserting our 5mm hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the bottom. Now right after that, we're going to be inserting our yarn onto our hook, pull through, and then do a chain up of 1 to secure. And then from here, we're going to alternate between just 1 single crochet and then a decrease of 2 single crochet, making our way all the way around, making sure we're working in through the side rows. So let's get that started. So we're all going to start by finding our first available side row. This is mine right here, so I'm just going to insert my hook into there with a single crochet. Now into the next 2 side rows, we're going to do a decrease. So this is my next, and this is my following side row. What we're going to do is insert your hook into that next stitch, pull through, and then also into that next side row, pull through. Now once we have those 3 loops, yarn over and pull through all 3, and that is that. Let's just do one more set. Start by finding our next available side row, which this is mine. I'm going to do just 1 single crochet into there, and then we're going to do a decrease. So find your next side row, insert your hook into the top of that side row, pull through, and then insert your hook into the top of that next side row, and pull through. Once we have those 3 loops, yarn over, pull through all 3, and that's it. We're just going to continue to do this, making our way all the way around, slip stitch into that chain space, and then I will meet you guys back. Alright, so I am back and I've just finished up my single crochet row along the bottom. And now we're going to do the length of our bottom band. So this is going to be done pretty much the same way that the cuffs have been done. So we're all going to start off by making a chain the length that we want our bottom band to be. And I would like for mine to be just about 2.5 inches or 7 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain of 13. Now that we have our chain, we're going to slip stitch all the way back down. So block off that last chain, do a chain 1, and then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, insert with a slip stitch and put 1 slip stitch into every chain. And now that we've put 1 slip stitch into every chain, we're going to slip stitch it into the base. So just start by finding that next available stitch, slip stitch it into there to close off this row. And now from here, just to get started on the following row, slip stitch into that next available stitch, flip our work, and then do a row of back loop slip stitches. Then from there, we're just going to continue to do our back loop slip stitch rows, connecting it into the base the same way that we just did, until we don't have any more stitches left to work into, and then I will meet you guys back to seam it up. Alright, so we are back and our bottom band is all finished up. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're just going to close it all up together with an outside loop slip stitch seam. So the same seam that we did for the cuffs. Since we already know how to do that, I'm just going to do the first one with you guys. And first things first, we just want to make sure that our work is still flipped right side out. Then from there, all we're going to do is find that first available stitch into the front panel and insert only in through that front loop. And then we're going to find that next available stitch into the back panel and insert only in through that back loop. And once we have those 3 loops, just yarn over and pull through all 3. And then that's it. We're going to continue to do this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. Do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I will meet you back. Alright, so we have just finished up our bottom band and we're all done. Last thing we're going to have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it. Hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye!